from my island residence, Hawaii. E ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā rangatiratanga, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. And traditional Māori greetings from my island residence of birth, Aotearoa, New Zealand. This greeting honors the mana, or the power, in this room, and the chieftainship, or the leadership, that I have been so impressed to see here in Guam, and huge congratulations to the Centre for Island Sustainability on 10 years anniversary. You are really a pioneer in the region, and it's such a privilege and a pleasure to be with you all to help celebrate that 10th anniversary. The theme, sustainability then, was beautifully covered by Master Navigator Larry Reigetal and his incredibly enthusiastic students yesterday. And my task today is a little more difficult because you will have noticed a question mark after sustainability again. And that is absolutely the crux of the matter. There is a question mark. Larry said it beautifully yesterday when he pointed out that those of us who live on islands are those who have least contributed to climate change, and yet we are the ones who will bear the brunt of it. So I'd like to spend the next 20 minutes with you surveying the global architecture for sustainability, looking at the role that islands can play, using Hawaii particularly as an example. And then I would love to have a conversation to see how it is that we might not be climate despondents, but in fact be optimists. It was such an uplifting moment yesterday to see Senator Shelton announce the 50% renewable energy for Guam by 2035. So you guys are not just sitting back and saying, oh, we're victims, there's nothing we can do about it. You are actually leading and making this an opportunity. So it's a thrill to be here. To start, the global architecture. Anybody know where the sustainable development concept originated? Okay, so the Brundtland Report. This concept, which very much draws on island wisdom, defines sustainable development as development which does not take away from future generations. And that's very much the concept that we heard from Larry yesterday. It's about thinking forward, not just thinking, well, I'm going to be dead, so it doesn't matter. Actually thinking about how we are stewards of the land, of our oceans, and how we can create a positive impact during our time on the planet. So fast forward to 2000 and the Millennial Declaration, which is when leaders came together at the UN and announced 8 what are known as MDGs, or Millennial Development Goals. Now, number 7 addressed environment, but I can tell you that those goals were written on the back of an envelope in the bowels of the UN, led by the then ambassador to the UN for the US. And Betty said to me, you know, really, we thought we needed an announcement, so we came up with those goals. What she wasn't expecting was that those goals would actually become very impactful. And those of us who led development agencies, such as me, started to use those to monitor progress. So in 2010, when the United Nations started to think about what would replace the Millennial Development Goals and what could be a global blueprint for development from 2015 through 2030, they decided to do things very differently. And there was a huge outreach. So Helen Clark, who was then the administrator of UNDP and had previously been Prime Minister in New Zealand for 9 years, wanted to make sure that millions of people were actually consulted and included as the negotiations for what are now known as the Sustainable Development Goals went forward. There are 17. So The Economist wrote an article saying only the UN something for everyone has resulted in too much of everything for anyone. So it's true, 17 is an unwieldy number. But I think what's exciting about these 17 goals is that they were consultative. And I was part of many late night sessions at the UN, battling it out. Second, that these are truly global goals. For the first time in our history, we have a global development agenda, not just developed countries telling developing countries what to do, but a global development agenda where we have all signed on to these goals. And in 2015, 193 UN member countries signed on to these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Climate change is included. Life below water is included. Life on land is included. And what is exciting is that there is an integrated approach to cultural and environmental and economic issues. So what Austin called yesterday the triple bottom line. We talk about people, planet, and I think Jackie rewrote profit to prosperity beautifully, and I'm going to use that going forward. So we added 2 more P's. We actually added the importance of partnership, and that's SDG 17. And that one I think is absolutely critical when I see the collaborative way that the Center for Island Studies has been working as part of SPREP, part of the Global Consortium for Sustainability Outcomes, which we have at Arizona State University. I'm just going to move that forward. Ooh, I'm on steroids here. Okay. So when we think about the role of islands, in 2015 it was not just the Sustainable Development Goals that were agreed. It was also in December. Anyone tell me what happened in Paris in December 2015? Yes, the climate accords. And these were really groundbreaking because people had been meeting in what we call the Conference of the Parties, or the COPs, for years and years and years, 16 years, with no outcome. And so in 2015, it was really a watershed year for the global community. We had in March, in Sendai, the Disaster Risk Reduction Framework, which actually acknowledged that we needed to come together as a global community and figure out a blueprint for the increase in disasters that we have been seeing. Second, in July in Addis Ababa, we came up with a special agreement on development financing. And the recognition, having heard from our wonderful private sector panel just now, that it's not just governments that can create sustainable development. It's the private sector where trillions of dollars of investment can be unleashed. That is so important. So delighted to see the CEO of the Bank of Guam here and leading the way in terms of making sure that we have sustainable financing. Then in September, the Sustainable Development Goals, and at the end of the year, the Paris Accords. And why were islands so important? We would not have had the mention of 1.5 degrees global warming without advocacy from islands. So we may be small, but islands are really making a big difference. And it's exciting to see that in partnership with the B team, again with the private sector, that those negotiations were successful. So let me now share with you just a little bit about what happened to me after my personal engagement with the Sustainable Development Goals. I have to confess that after a time on the Security Council, when New Zealand was chair, I started to realize the linkages between conflict and climate change. I was co-chair for humanitarian access into Syria, which I think must be the world's worst job. And it was absolutely frightening to see that over time, as there had been the worst drought in Syria's history, ISIS had come in and persuaded farmers to trade their plows for Kalashnikovs. And we saw then one of the ugliest civil wars, 9 million people displaced in Syria, with the result that we now have the highest number of refugees and displaced people in our living history, over 66 million people. And we know that we are going to have to deal with the issue of climate refugees. So, despite the fact we had these 4 landmark agreements, what I had been seeing from the inside that I'm sharing with you now was that there was a lot of pushback. So, for example, SDG 5, the empowerment of women and girls, and for those of you who have read Project Drawdown, 2 of the top 10 solutions involve girls' education and family planning. Would we think that in 2015 it would be a no-brainer to agree that gender equality was an important value? I would have thought so. But disappointingly, the negotiations ended up with a subclause that talked about in line with national laws. And having in a previous life run a project at the World Bank called Women, Business and the Law, I knew that there were only 6 countries that had gender equitable laws. So very disappointing to see an opportunity missed. When we look too at clean energy, fantastic to have a sustainable development goal. Can anyone guess in 2015 when we were negotiating the Paris Accords what the IMF estimated fossil fuel subsidies were? And I want a wild guess because it's a wild number. Throw out a figure. $1 trillion. Do I have an advance on $1 trillion? I'm serious, unfortunately. 2 trillion. Do I have an advance on 2 trillion? 5.4 trillion dollars in fossil fuel subsidies. So great goals on the one hand, but in reality, what I saw happening behind the scenes totally depressed me. And I accepted a secondment to the East-West Center in Hawaii, where I had been a graduate student in the 80s and met my husband. And I arrived back pretty despondent. And I met 3 women who changed my life. The first was Julie Wrigley, who is the founder of the Global Institute of Sustainability at ASU. And she told me a story of how she began to notice climate change on the California coast as a kid. She went to Stanford, did a degree in environmental anthropology, and Wrigley, you will know the name, a lot of money to then invest in positive initiatives for climate change. And she went back to her alma mater, Stanford, and said, I'm going to give you $50 million as a start, as seed money. But the quid pro quo is every student who graduates from Stanford must graduate with a sustainability competency. And Stanford said, oh, I think that's too hard. So she then met Michael Crow, who had been the co-founder of the Earth Institute at Columbia University with Jeffrey Sachs. And Michael Crow said, I think that's a great idea. So Julie gave the first $50 million, founded the Global Institute, which now has a School of Sustainability, which was the first in the nation. So Guam was not far behind. So very exciting to see that that School of Sustainability now has some 500 sustainability scholars and scientists. And now every student at ASU graduates with a sustainability competency, 117,000 of them. And what's also exciting is that there are now a range of innovative initiatives. ASU has partnered with Uber and with Adidas and with Starbucks so that their employees can earn a degree online. There's now 500,000 online learners, and guess what? Every one of them graduates with a sustainability competency. So this was the beginning of the turnaround for me from being a pessimist to an optimist. And I suddenly thought, wow, this is amazing if education can have this kind of a multiplier effect. And I was speaking at an international graduate students conference about this initiative, and a young gentleman came up to me afterwards and he said, I want you to know I'm an engineering student at ASU, and it's real. I'm going to be a very different solar engineer because of the opportunities I have had to learn new ways of doing things. So when Julie asked me if I would become her executive director in Hawaii for the Asia Pacific, I decided to take early retirement from the foreign ministry, took a huge pay cut, and said, yes, I'm on board because we all need to help save the planet. And what's been exciting for me is The second woman that I met in Hawaii really embodies the vision that Julie has, as Jackie says, of Hawaii as a living lab. Celeste Connors was President Obama's climate change advisor in the White House, came back to head an organization called Hawaii Green Growth. And we heard Austin reference the potential for Guam green growth, which I think is a brilliant idea. And Hawaii Green Growth is a consortium of the governor, the 4 mayors, all of the major private sector CEOs, and civil society who agree that Hawaii is a living lab for sustainability and who have signed on for 6 major goals that crosswalk against the Sustainable Development Goals. And when I saw this, I said to Celeste, being the pessimist I still was, I said to Celeste, well, you know, come on, Hawaii's an island. Why on earth are you putting all this effort into these goals? It's not even going to make a dent. And she looked at me and she said, Amanda, we can show the way. Just because others are not doing the right thing doesn't mean to say that we in Hawaii can't do the right thing. And that's what I'm seeing here in Guam, which is so uplifting. And actually, there is a multiplier impact. When I was privileged to speak at Governor Brown's Global Climate Action Summit in 2017, I was so, it was just last year, 2018. I was so excited because California also committed to 100% renewable energy and to a carbon neutral California by 2045, the 2 same goals as Hawaii. And Governor Brown referenced Hawaii from the stage. So the 5th largest economy in the world, which really can make a massive difference, was influenced by an island economy. So that for me is just so exciting. And I want to share with you very quickly a little bit about the Global Consortium for Sustainability Outcomes at ASU, and then show you a very quick video about Hawaii and why Indigenous wisdom and sustainability then needs to become our future answer for sustainability again. So very quickly, the GCSO is a consortium, a global consortium, which is gathering like-minded institutions from around the globe. You'll see Guam there, the only island. University of Hawaii has not yet been admitted. So Guam, we need you to help the University of Hawaii, which last year, you'll be pleased to know, actually did found a Center for Sustainability and Resilience. So 9 years after Guam, so we're hoping that Hawaii will qualify to be a member soon. A whole range of initiatives here, and the idea is to innovate, to replicate, and then to scale so that our island solutions can really have global impact. It was so exciting yesterday hearing the twins talk about their project, their very practical project here to get rid of single-use plastic and the solution that they were bringing. Now, if 12-year-olds can do that on the island of Guam, wow. So here are some of the project locations around the world that the members, like the Center for Island Sustainability, are engaged in. And the real key is that these are consortia. So you cannot apply for the funding on your own. You need to combine with universities, whether it's in Germany, Japan, and I'm excited to let you know that my alma mater, the University of Otago, has just become the newest member. So we're going to show this very quick video now, and Austin, I don't know if we need to wave a magic wand for somebody to turn that on.
Over 1,000 years ago, centuries before Columbus and Viking longships ventured across the Atlantic, Polynesian voyaging canoes pushed out into the uncharted waters in the Pacific and found Hawaii, the planet's most isolated landmass. Hawaii forced the original explorers to quickly learn how to live in balance with natural resources and our environment, and provided enough food to feed an entire population without the large-scale imports of today. Now, our entire planet is entering even more dangerous, uncharted waters. Climate change, an explosion of technology, and a finite amount of natural resources force us to summon the same courage as those who headed out into the unknown. Now, Hawaii is having to learn to chart a new path.
95% of what we consume, we import. 90% of the energy that we need to maintain our lifestyle is imported. We start to question the ability for us to have enough fresh water.
Hawaii has a number of challenges and opportunities in the face of those challenges. I think the most immediate is the fact that we have a climate crisis that's moving very rapidly.
The challenges here are great. They're really important. They're, in some ways, decades ahead of what other people are experiencing elsewhere. So this is the front line.
Beginning with the Hawaiian Renaissance in the 1970s, coupled with renewed environmental awareness and an energy revolution at the turn of the 21st century, Hawaii has emerged at the leading edge of the sustainability movement.
There is an amazing movement that's redefining Hawaii, and we're essentially just going back to learn how to be islanders again.
Hawaii's isolated islands and small electric grids have long been subject to a crippling dependence on imported oil. But now, the nation's highest rate of solar panel installation, a high penetration of electric vehicles, and new battery storage options are forcing Hawaii to rethink and redesign the traditional energy utility model. Hawaii's tropical forests and reefs teem with hundreds of unique species found nowhere else on Earth. But Hawaii is now known as the extinction capital of the world.
We've let too many slip away, but it's forced our islands to pioneer work in community-based marine management, conservation partnerships between public and private landowners, and incredible efforts to rehabilitate species. We are playing catch-up, fast.
The Aloha Plus Challenge lays out strong, statewide 2030 sustainability goals endorsed by county mayors, the governor, and other key leaders. Hawaii is the only state in the country to have clear sustainability targets embraced by the state legislature and every single county.
We cannot address the issues that we face in Hawaii in our silos. You have to address food security with energy security at the same time. You have to address water security. All of these are integrated issues.
Hawaii has a strong and thriving indigenous culture that has influenced and mixed with later migrations of American, European, and Asian populations.
We recognize that all these different worldviews make us stronger. And if you're going to tackle these big problems, it helps to have many hands and many perspectives.
Hawaii's image as paradise belies the serious challenges that it continues to face. Invasive species, soil loss, and climate change impacts are significant issues that deserve investment and sustainable solutions.
I think the greatest opportunity for Hawaii is actually at the water, energy, food nexus. What's often seen as a barrier, which is Hawaii's geographic isolation and size, I would say is actually an asset, because you can really look at those ridge to reef solutions or Mauka to Makai solutions, and it really builds on Hawaii's culture of sustainability and systems thinking.
We have some of the most wide-ranging ecosystems, from high alpine summits to coral reefs. And things like climate change, global warming, can be studied here in a way that you can't find access to those systems almost anywhere else.
The advantages of developing a global model on an island is that you have a finite area to work with. From that, you can scale it up.
Time is our most limited resource, and our greatest asset is people. And Hawaii stands out because the people part of the equation is really working well.
Hawaii is moving towards the balance, and when Hawaii achieves it, it becomes that starlight for the rest of the world to see and know that it can be done. That's the gift.
This is why philanthropists, scientists, elected leaders, educators, business leaders, and change makers are finding ways in Hawaii to merge the past and present, science and spirit, and protect our Earth as a fragile island floating in space.
So science and spirit, it's fantastic for me to be here at the heart of Indigenous wisdom. Master Navigator Larry and I were talking last night about the incredible generosity of Micronesia in sharing your voyaging secrets with Nainoa Thompson, who you saw in the film. And I think the incredible scientific and spiritual wisdom from here in Micronesia is really your gift to the world. And thank you so much for sharing it. Yesterday, when we talked about sustainability then, and we heard from Larry's enthusiastic, inspired students, they were talking about Indigenous wisdom, and they were talking about systems thinking, the interdisciplinary kind of coalitions that we see here. And this is where I go from seeing obstacles to seeing opportunities. So I'm going to whiz through these slides and show you a little bit of what is happening in Hawaii. So you see here the Sustainable Development Goals on the right, and you see the Aloha Plus goals on the left. These are the 6 major priorities for Hawaii: 100% clean energy, doubling local food production by 2030, a green workforce and education, waste reduction, smart sustainable communities, and natural resource management. All the issues that we have been talking about over the last couple of days. What is even more exciting is that Hawaii has been made the first island and first Asia-Pacific local 2030 hub for the United Nations, becoming part of a network through the Hawaii Green Growth Initiative. Here are the partners. Very similar, having heard Jackie and having the conversation about the incredible board that you have here for the Center for Island Sustainability. Very similar kind of initiative. Now, measurement. I'm a boring old economist, as you can probably tell by all the stats I quote. What gets measured gets done. What matters, we measure. So here are our 6 goals in Hawaii, and here are how we measure them. And we actually do it through citizen science, including our university students. Back pre-contact, 6% of Hawaii's land fed 1 million people, and yet today we import 95% of our food. This is the ahapua'a, or the ridge-to-reef mechanism, and the fish ponds, aquaculture, very advanced, the kinds of solutions that was sustainability then, that we hope can be sustainability again. The importance of partnership. You'll see Ban Ki-moon on the right. When I headed the development program for New Zealand, we brought him to Kiribati, and he woke up the next morning and he said, "Amanda, I had a life jacket in my hotel room. Was that a mistake?" Well, actually, no, because Kiribati is only a couple of feet above sea level. And that experience made him understand that very famous quote, that ours is the first generation to really feel the impact of climate change, but we may be the last generation to be able to do something about it. So time is really of the essence. The Alawai Watershed Collaboration, you guys have a big defense presence here the way we do in Hawaii. So we're helping the Army Corps of Engineers come up with an integrated community ecosystem-based approach to the Alawai watershed, which, by the way, if it is not worked on, could damage $8 billion of infrastructure in Waikiki. The Sustainability Business Forum, I heard yesterday with intrigue your green initiative for business, the certification, which sounds really interesting. In Hawaii, we have a carbon offset, which is a project that a number of businesses are doing together. And we're thinking about trying to bring in the Palau Pledge as the Aloha Plus Pledge so that tourists are very cognizant of the need to protect our islands. So I see that my time is up, and I am really interested in having a conversation. But I wanted to finish with two quotes. Jacinda Ardern, who is the youngest Prime Minister, the youngest leader in the world, our current New Zealand Prime Minister, was asked a couple of weeks ago, March the 23rd, in an interview with The New Yorker, if she was not feeling bad about having just had a child, given the ravages that climate change is wreaking and about to wreak on our planet. And she came up with an answer that I found really inspiring. She said, "It just depends on whether you want to take that as a weight of responsibility or the opportunity of a lifetime." And that has really helped me in my journey from being a climate despondent to being an optimist, that we as island dwellers can really lead the way. And I was so enthused by one of Larry's students yesterday, who was so passionate, that I wrote down her quote. She said, "We are small. We are only islanders, but we can have a big impact on our world. Sustainability then, sustainability again, period, no question mark. Ancient futures, #now." Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have about 5 minutes for questions and answers, and we have a couple of mics floating around in the room, so please just raise your hand and we'll have a microphone. Yes, this gentleman right here. Oh, yes. There's a mic coming for you, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a wonderful and inspiring talks. My name is Masanori Kobayashi from the Ocean Policy Research Institute, Japan. I have a question about your reference to this $5.4 trillion subsidies for the fossil fuel. What is really do you see the driving force for raising this contradictory financial flows to this fossil fuel? And how can we really break the chains between these policy contradictions between what we have to do for climate change and what is actually happening in the fiscal resource allocations? Thank you.
Thank you. It's such a brilliant question, and I am asking it every day. So that $5.4 trillion is an IMF statistic, if you would like to quote it, and it makes no sense, as you say. My only explanation is that there has been such capture of regulation by big oil that we as citizens really need to be standing up and making people aware of these contradictions. If I also look at the most recent data of $1 billion spent by the 5 largest oil companies to prevent legislative change, to stop a carbon tax going forward, I guess it's kind of logical. If you have a vested interest and you don't think 7 generations ahead, you only think, okay, how much money can I make? How can I be the richest person in the cemetery? You're going to act in a way that is not consistent with, as President Tom said yesterday, our island Earth. We are all together on island Earth. And I was so excited about the demonstration of over 100,000 school children around the world, inspired by that one young Swedish girl, Greta Thunberg, who was also at Davos with us this year. And she just stood on the steps outside Parliament and said, "I'm waiting for action." She was one lone little girl who said, "I am standing up for what's right." And she started an entire movement. So my answer would be, I guess, threefold. One, you scientists have an enormous role to play because you were able to shine a light on the data sets and actually show what is happening. So science, thank you. Center for Island Innovation, thank you. Second of all, the children of tomorrow, and we heard those inspiring twins last night, they were awesome, really have a role to play in standing up and saying, hey, this is our planet. You guys need to do something about it immediately. And third, the alignment between legislation and action. And again, thrilled to see, Senator Sheldon, your leadership. I would love to see a ban on styrofoam in Hawaii and in Guam, because if it is cheaper, if we don't have the alignment, and this is what the problem with fossil fuel subsidies is, they look cheap, but they're artificially cheap because we're not costing in all the negative externalities. You are almost full in landfill. We are almost full in landfill, and yet styrofoam is cheaper than biodegradable solutions. It's a false economy. We know that end to end it is not. And sometimes we just need legislators to step in and step up, as you have on renewable energy, and say, okay, here's where we have to move, and here's what the data really shows us the economics behind this is. Unfortunately, with GDP, which is a very old-fashioned measure, it was designed in World War II as a system of national accounting, and really it should have been supplanted many years ago. It measures things that have a dollar sign attached. So you cut down a tree, it has a value. You leave it in the ground, it doesn't, which is why it's so important to have natural capital accounting and the rise of new indices like the Gross National Happiness Index, for example, in Bhutan, where I just was a couple of weeks ago. It was fascinating to see. So I do think we really need to align the true cost and ensure that that's aligned with incentives. Thank you, fantastic question.
All right, do we have another question in the audience? Oh, yes.
You mentioned 3 women that changed your life, but you only talked about 2.
Oh, yes. So I was running out of time. The third woman who changed my life is a young woman called Brianne West. And we heard a lot about single-use plastics yesterday. And she came to the East West Center on a scholarship that I give every year to a young woman leader. And she came to a program called Changing Faces, Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership in Environment. And fascinating story. So I had the privilege of meeting her. And at the time that I met her, she was making shampoo and conditioner bars, wrapping them in forest certified product. And she was doing it in her kitchen with her mom. And she said, Amanda, I was studying chemistry at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch. We had the big earthquake. And I realized that if I didn't hurry up and make a difference in the world, I wasn't sure I was going to have the time to make change. So she dropped out of university, and she had seen the statistic that 100 million shampoo and conditioner bottles were being sent to landfill in New Zealand every year. Now we have just over 4 million people in New Zealand, 100 million shampoo and conditioner bottles, plastic, landfill. And she was horrified, and she said, as a chemist, I knew that we didn't need water in our shampoo. We can have a bar. We have a soap bar. And so fast forward, I'm so excited. I helped her with a couple of little connections. She now has 2 factories, and she has done a $20 million capital raise, and her product, Ethique, is in Walgreens in the US and in Hardee's in the UK. So she has the first zero-waste, full-line cosmetics company in the world. So that's one inspiring university dropout. And I wanted to show too the wallet that I bought last night. And this is Mr. Green Banana. I'm not sure if you're here, but I was so impressed not only with the beautiful booklets that we were given as part of our conference, but also these fabulous wallets that are made from green bananas. And this to me is another secret. How is it that innovation and entrepreneurship can unlock the solutions to a green economy? In Hawaii, as in Guam, we have tourism and we have the DoD. But there's a huge opportunity in green products that can be a win-win. So it's not an either or, it's actually a both and. We can both save the planet and create beautiful, innovative, new products. We might be out of time, but love to have a conversation with anybody in the coffee break, and as long as you don't mind my very sexy, croaky voice. Thank you all very much. It's been such an honor to be here, and the hospitality's been amazing. Thank you.
Si tu Amanda Ellis.